International Conference on African Development, otherwise known as TICAD 9, concludes in Yokohama, Japan. Kenya has managed to secure itself $169 million in financing, and this is to support the East African country's vehicle assembly and energy sectors. The Samurai financing facility is set to strengthen the local vehicle assembly and parts manufacturing industry, while also addressing electricity transmission and distribution losses. For more on this, we joined this afternoon by Peter Wakaba, a business news editor in Nairobi. Peter is also an economic commentator. Welcome to African Business, Peter. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
So could you start off perhaps by briefing us on the Kenya-Japan bilateral relations and also, I guess, what makes Japan a strategic partner for Kenya's vehicle and energy sectors?
Well, to start off, the partnership between Kenya and Japan diplomatically goes back decades, with as many as about 120 Japanese companies already operating in Kenya and in the East Africa region, using Kenya as a stepping stone into the hinterland, producing everything from medicine to vehicles to factory equipment, agricultural equipment. The list goes on and on. The trade regime, though, has been highly skewed in terms of Japan, because Kenya imports much more, doing only about less than a third of what Japan exports to Kenya, going in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. And while Japan exports mostly manufacturing finished materials, Kenya exports mostly agricultural products and is looking to improve this going forward.
And what are the prospects and the projections on how Kenya's automotive sector is expected to directly benefit from this loan? And if you could talk to us as well about the size of the sector in Kenya.
If you think about it, the large Japanese conglomerates making vehicles in Kenya, we have market leader Isuzu East Africa, market leader by far for especially light commercial vehicles. Then Toyota comes second. Toyota, though, plays into several different spaces, being also in the agricultural space. Toyota Tsusho having put up a fertilizer plant in the western part of Kenya to service the entire region. Isuzu in particular celebrating 50 years of operations in the country this year, having produced about 100,000 units since then, just under 100,000. It's a small but growing, very fast growing sector compared to global standards, and of course compared to the South African market, but one that's opening up quite fast. And the focus is now starting to go towards cleaner, more energy efficient vehicles, especially those that are powered not by petrol or diesel, but electric.
So if we look at the sum total of this loan, it's $169 million. Do you know which specific projects are going to be financed through this loan? Have those already been identified?
So one of the critical things that I know that they are looking towards is to ensure that going forward, the Toyota Motor Corporation is expected to put in about 5,000 e-mobility vehicles into the country over the next 5 years. And this is also expected to drive 30 to 40% local content in assembly and eventually manufacturing, so a trend towards full local production of the future. So this loan goes towards expansion of facilities, putting up the necessary materials and supporting infrastructure for e-mobility. Of course, the move towards cleaner energy, like you had mentioned earlier, and of course the health aspect, because there has also been a letter of intent and a concept note that has been signed to enable one of the larger pharmaceutical companies in Japan to start making bacterial pneumonia medicine here in Kenya, a company called Shionogi and Company Limited. One of the pillars, of course, of the TICAD 9 conference was society, apart from, of course, economy and the political peace and stability. So quite a large focus towards not just economic but also social development in terms of education and health.
It does sound to me, Peter, that the vehicle and energy sector is but a gateway to what could be a much larger relationship, commercial relationship between Japan and Kenya. You've just mentioned now investment in the pharmaceuticals industry. Are there other sectors that you believe would be next in line for investment from Japan?
Yes, definitely. So, if you think about it, Japan has been struggling to play catch up to China in the region. China being the largest trading partner for the whole of Africa, not just Kenya. And then, of course, remembering the trend towards the Pan African market, the AFCFTA. And the push has then been to try and catch up with the volume of trade that China does, which is about 250 billion US dollars annually. Japan may be doing just about a tenth of this. And the initiatives then towards to capture and open up new markets through initiatives such as the Free and Open Indo-Pacific Initiative, which will push companies across the Indian Ocean seaboard that have direct access to Japan to be the stepping stones for the rest of the region. Now, it's important to remember that altogether, Japan has announced about 30 billion more worth of investments across the continent. And while China goes the, so to say, the debt and infrastructure development route, Japan has been focusing largely on aid and now is moving more towards trade. And the Prime Minister, Mr. Ishiba, saying that they will push so that the next conferences will provide direct initiatives that open up markets, especially in the face of a tightening of the global trading space based on what has been happening in regards to the US and tariffs. That's opening up new markets for African countries in the Far East, in Japan itself, and of course, working to bring specific investors for specific sectors. In this case, Kenya itself was able to do direct engagements with about 120 direct investors who are then going to focus on different specific areas, of course, around the motor vehicle, like you mentioned, that industry, manufacturing, and technology, and of course, to come and invest in the various special economic zones that have been built with a huge focus on internet, technology, and communications.
Peter, when I look at the last numbers that I have, looking at Kenya's debt profile, the latest numbers that I have are towards the end of 2024, which is September 2024. And back then, Kenya's government debt stood at 67.6% of nominal GDP. And we know that far surpasses the IMF's recommended threshold of 50%. Now, given Kenya's current debt levels, what are the risks that come with taking on a debt of this magnitude for Kenya?
Well, if you think about it, one of the initiatives that Kenya has been trying to do to get out of this situation is to essentially reschedule its debt, which essentially means that if you have a large loan coming due as of December 2025, putting pressure on you to be able to pay this in dollars, if you can find someone to then buy that off, give you a longer tenure so that you pay over a longer period at maybe high interest rates, but essentially giving you breathing space, then that's what the government does, and it has already done that through a Eurobond. So this new samurai bond goes in that direction, essentially giving the government an ability to source dollars as and when it wants from that market, because having already done one bond, then that lowers the risk profile and enables local investors in those bonds who will buy those bonds in Japan to already have had a taste of the pie, and thus build the appetite. So essentially, it's a situation that will continue to unwind in a good way as we go forward and it's managed properly. The key thing was to ensure that there were ways to be able to find the foreign exchange that was needed to pay off these loans, and that can be done over longer tenures, lengthening the loan periods so that then the country gets more fiscal space to be able to meet its obligations.
Peter Wakaba, thank you very much for that update.
Asante sana.
Asante sana. Peter Wakaba there, business news editor in Nairobi and economic commentator on Kenya's current debt levels, but also perhaps more importantly, the loan that they've gotten from the Samurai financing company of Japan, $169 million that are going to go largely towards the vehicle sector and energy. But also, as you could hear, so many other sectors likely to benefit from this, including the pharmaceutical sector. It's exactly 25 minutes after 4 p.m.
Our CISA.